I was hiding outside when I heard my son tell his kids, "Don't worry, Grandma's money will buy you everything you want." I felt my blood boil. The next morning, I called my lawyer and donated every penny to charity. When my son found out, he showed up at my door screaming. But what I said next made him go completely silent. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. I stood frozen on the cool flagstones of my son's back patio, a still warm dish of chicken and rice casserole in my hands. The evening air held the damp promise of rain. I had come to the sliding glass door to call out that I was leaving, but the scene inside stopped my voice in my throat. My son, Marcus, was in his leather recliner, his back to me. My grandchildren, Chloe and David, were on the rug at his feet, their faces upturned and lit by the large television screen. They were not watching a show. They were presenting a case. "But Dad," Chloe's voice, 10 years old and already polished with negotiation, floated through the glass. "Everyone at school has them. The new Ultra Plus. My phone is like 2 years old. It's embarrassing." David, ever the echo at 8, chimed in. "And the mods for my VR rig. Jackson's dad bought him the whole expansion pack. It's not fair." I saw Marcus run a hand over his close-cut hair. I knew that gesture. It was his gesture of appeasement, of giving in. He used to do it when he was a teenager asking for a new video game system. My grip tightened on the ceramic dish. All right, Marcus said, his voice a low rumble of paternal authority. "Enough. You'll get them." The children whooped, a sound of pure victory. Chloe clapped her hands. "But," Marcus continued, raising a finger, "the whooping subsided. These are big-ticket items. You have to be patient. The budget's tight right now with the country club fees and the new car lease." A pout formed on Chloe's face. "But you said maybe for my birthday. My birthday is next month." "I know, baby," Marcus said. He leaned forward, his voice dropping into a tone I recognized. It was his conspiratorial tone, the one he used to share a secret. It was the tone that now sent a cold wire down my spine. "Don't worry about it. Seriously. Just be good. Wait it out. Grandma's money will buy you everything." He said it so simply, a statement of fact, a law of nature. The children cheered again, louder this time, a sound that scraped against my ears. David did a little dance on the rug. "Yes, Grandma's the best." "Grandma's loaded," Chloe corrected, with the smug certainty of a child repeating a phrase they've heard often. "Exactly," Marcus said, leaning back with a smile I could hear in his voice. He lifted his glass of scotch in a small, invisible toast. "Grandma's money will buy you everything, so stop stressing me out about it." The world did not tilt. The ground did not shake. The only change was inside my chest, where a specific contained space, the space reserved for the unspoken hope that my son saw me as more than a function, sealed itself shut. It felt like a door clicking locked, not with a bang, but with the final quiet sound of a key turning. I looked down at the casserole dish. I had spent 2 hours making it. Marcus had mentioned last week offhand that he missed my cooking, that takeout was getting old. I had taken it as an invitation, as a thread of connection. Now I saw it as an invoice, another deposit into the account he was spending from. I did not open the door. I did not call out. I bent, my knees protesting the movement, and set the dish carefully on the patio table. I turned and walked back across the dewy grass to my car, a sensible sedan 10 years old. My movements were precise, automatic. I started the engine and drove away from his large modern house with its perfect lawn. I did not look back. The drive home to my smaller, older house in Oak Ridge was a blur of streetlights and silent intersections. My hands were steady at 10 and 2 on the wheel. My mind was not. It was a vault, and the words were inside, echoing. "Grandma's money will buy you everything." They ricocheted off memories, me sitting at this same kitchen table 30 years earlier, a stack of bills and a calculator, my fingers smudged with ink from the ledger book. Working overtime at the library to pay for Marcus's basketball shoes, the ones he had to have. Denying myself a new coat so his school trip could be paid in full. Sitting him down at this very table, his small hands fidgeting, teaching him that money was earned, that it represented time and sweat, that it was a tool, not a toy. I had been a single mother since he was 4. His father's departure was a clean, quiet cut, followed by a trickle of child support that dried up within a year. I raised Marcus with 2 inheritances, the small, tight house from my own mother and her set of principles. "We are not poor in spirit, Eleanor," she would say. "We are careful, in fact. There is a difference. I was careful. I built a life, a career as a school librarian, a small but solid pension, a paid-off mortgage, and a nest egg, the money Marcus so casually referenced. It was not a fortune. It was the residue of a lifetime of saying no to myself so I could say yes to him. It was the physical proof of my care, and he had reduced it to a slush fund for luxury gadgets for children who already had too much. I parked in my driveway. The house was dark. I walked inside, not turning on the lights. I knew every creak of the floor, every shape of the furniture in the gloom, the silhouette of my reading chair, the glass case holding my mother's china, the photographs on the wall, Marcus in his cap and gown, me beaming beside him, Marcus getting married, Chloe and David as babies in my arms. I went to my bedroom. I did not undress. I sat on the edge of my bed, the same bed I had collapsed into after double shifts, and looked out the window at the old maple tree in the backyard. Its branches were black against the purple night sky. The anger came then. Not a hot rage, but a cold, heavy thing. It settled in my stomach like a stone. It was the anger of violation. He had not stolen from my purse. He had stolen my narrative. In his mind, in my grandchildren's minds, my life's work was not love or sacrifice or lessons. It was a balance, a number waiting to be transferred. I thought of my mother's hands, rough from cleaning other people's houses, placing a $5 bill in the church collection plate every Sunday. Charity, she said, is the rent you pay for your room on earth. I had continued that in smaller ways. A donation to the food bank. Books for the school drive. Marcus knew this. He had rolled his eyes at it. Just write a check, Mom, and be done with it. All this small stuff is a waste of energy. The stone of anger in my gut grew colder, harder. It became a focal point. I replayed the evening. The casual betrayal in his tone, the children's cheers, my silent retreat, a lifetime of being the quiet one, the peacemaker, the giver. It ended tonight on that patio. By the time the first gray light of dawn touched the maple leaves, I had not slept, but I was not tired. A strange, clear energy hummed in my veins. The grief was still there, a raw ache behind my breastbone, but it was now surrounded by a shell of absolute resolution. The question was not if I would act. The question was how. And the answer, as the sun finally rose, was simple and devastating. If my money was all he valued, then he would learn its true value. He would learn what it meant when it was gone. And he would learn that it was never his to begin with. I rose from the bed. My body felt stiff, but my mind was sharp. I walked to the kitchen, filled the kettle, and set it on the stove. I would need tea. I had calls to make. The first would be to Mrs. Wilkins, my lawyer for 40 years. I knew exactly what I needed to do. The inheritance my son was counting on would find a different home, a home where please and thank you were still the currency, and where a grandmother's worth was measured by her heart, not her bank account. The tea grew cold in my cup. The morning light, clean and sharp, fell across the kitchen table where I had spread the documents. My financial life was laid out in manila folders and bank statements. It was not a vast empire, but it was orderly. It was mine. The first folder contained the will, the one naming Marcus as the primary beneficiary, with trusts for Chloe and David. I had signed it 5 years ago after David was born. Mrs. Wilkins had advised it for simplicity. At the time, it felt like the natural order of things. A mother passes what she has to her son. Now, the words on the paper seemed naive, a contract written for a different man than the one who now existed. I opened the ledger next. It was a simple notebook, not a digital spreadsheet, my mother's habit. On the left, deposits, my monthly pension, the modest Social Security, the dividends from the careful investments I'd made over 30 years. On the right, expenses. They were few. The property taxes, the utilities, groceries, a line for charity that I had increased each year since retiring. The last page showed the total, the number Marcus had casually annexed for VR mods and luxury phones. I did not feel anger looking at it. I felt a clarifying detachment. This was not just money. It was a record. Every entry was a choice, a sacrifice, a delayed gratification. It was the physical proof of my mother's lesson. Be careful, in fact. I reached for the old photo album beside me. I had pulled it from the shelf earlier. Its black pages were brittle. I turned to a familiar photograph. My mother, Cora, standing on the steps of our old church, wearing her good dress and a hat with a small veil. She was handing an envelope to the pastor. I was about 12, standing beside her, looking up at her face. The photograph did not capture the amount in the envelope. It captured her posture, straight-backed, purposeful. That was the inheritance she'd given me. Not the money, but the principle. You are a steward. You pass things on. I closed the album. The decision was no longer a reactive impulse born of hurt. It was a logical conclusion. If my monetary legacy would only corrupt, then it was a failed legacy. I would not be a steward of corruption. The money had to serve a purpose aligned with the values that had earned it. It was the only correction possible. I picked up the phone. It was a landline, heavy in my hand. I dialed the number from memory. The receptionist at Wilkins and Associates answered on the second ring. "Good morning, Eleanor," she said. She had known me for decades. "Good morning, Sharon. Is Evelyn available?" "For you, always. Hold a moment." There was a click, then the clear, calm voice of Evelyn Wilkins. "Ellie, it's been a few months. Everything all right?" "I need to make significant changes to my estate plans, Evelyn, today." There was a brief pause on the line. I could hear the shift in her demeanor, from social to professional. "I see. Can you give me the nature of the changes?" "I am revoking my current will. I intend to liquidate the majority of my assets and donate the proceeds to charity, immediately." This time, the silence was longer. "Ellie," she said, her voice careful, "that is a substantial decision. Is there a health concern we should discuss?" "My health is fine. My judgment is clear. This is a decision about legacy. I do not wish my estate to go to my family." I heard her draw a slow breath. "Marcus is your executor and primary beneficiary. He has a copy of the current will. He will need to be notified of any changes." "I understand. I am not asking to hide the action. I am asking to execute it, cleanly and finally." "And the grandchildren's trusts?" "To be dissolved. The funds are to be included in the donation." Evelyn was quiet again. I knew what she was thinking. She had handled my divorce, modest as it was. She had drawn up the first will when Marcus was a minor. She knew the history. "Ellie," she said, her tone lowering, "has something happened? A falling out?" "Something has become clear," I said, my voice even. "I am redefining the terms of my legacy. I need your help to do it legally and without delay. Can you do that?" There was another pause, the sound of professional loyalty weighing against personal concern. "Of course," she said finally. The lawyer won. "I can draft a new will and a codicil today. For the asset liquidation and donation, we will need a more complex set of documents. You will need to specify the charities, and you should be aware that Marcus is a co-signer on your primary investment account. For your convenience, as I recall, he will receive automatic notifications of any large transfers." I had forgotten that detail. a piece of paperwork I'd signed years ago at Marcus's insistence, so he could help in an emergency. He had never touched it. He had just watched it. "I understand," I said. "The notifications are acceptable. I do not intend this to be a secret. I intend it to be a fact." "Very well," Evelyn said. I could hear the scratch of a pen on paper. "Come to the office this afternoon at 2. Bring a list of the charities you have in mind. We will start the process." "Thank you, Evelyn." "Ellie," she said, her voice softening for a moment, "this is a permanent step, you're sure?" I looked at the photograph of my mother on the church steps. I looked at the ledger of my careful life. I heard the echo of my son's voice from the night before. "I have never been more sure of anything," I said. After I hung up, I did not move for a while. The morning sun had moved, warming a different section of the worn wooden table. The paperwork before me was just paper now. Its power was transferring. I felt a strange emptiness, but it was not a sad emptiness. It was the emptiness of a room after a long-held burden has been removed. I stood and walked to the small desk in the living room. I took out a fresh sheet of paper and a pen. At the top, I wrote, "For the legacy of Cora Simmons." I began to list the charities. The process was methodical. I did not choose based on emotion, but on alignment. First, the local literacy nonprofit where I had volunteered after retiring. They bought books for schools in underfunded districts. Second, the scholarship fund at my mother's historically black college. It helped first-generation students, like my mother had been. Third, the community garden project in the old neighborhood, where they taught children to grow vegetables and sold the surplus to fund after-school programs. Each choice was a repudiation, not of Marcus, but of the values he was espousing. This money would not teach entitlement. It would teach literacy, history, self-reliance. It would feed minds and bodies. It would be a hand up, not a handout. I prepared a simple lunch. I ate it at the table, the list beside my plate. At 1 o'clock, I went to my bedroom. I chose a navy blue dress, simple but presentable. I looked at myself in the mirror. My silver hair was neat. My brown skin showed the lines of 68 years of smiles and worries. My eyes were clear. There was no hesitation in them. I gathered the folders into my old leather satchel. I added the list of charities. I locked the front door behind me. The drive to Evelyn's office in the city center was familiar. I had made it for happier reasons in the past. Today, the landmarks passed without registering. My mind was fixed on the mechanics ahead. Signatures, notarizations, instructions. I parked in the lot. The office building was a modest brick structure. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The door to Wilkins and Associates was wood with a frosted glass panel. I turned the handle and walked in. Sharon smiled at me from the front desk, but her eyes held a question. "She's ready for you, Eleanor. Go on back." I walked down the short hallway to Evelyn's corner office. The door was open. Evelyn stood as I entered. She was a tall, slender woman with sharp gray hair and glasses on a chain around her neck. She came around her large, tidy desk and took both my hands in hers. She searched my face. "You look resolved," she said quietly. "I am." She nodded, releasing my hands. "Then let's get to work. I have the preliminary documents ready." I sat in the client chair, placing my satchel on the floor. Evelyn handed me several pages. "This is the revocation of the previous will. This is the new will, naming the 3 charitable organizations as sole beneficiaries of the estate after the specific bequests of personal effects. This," she said, placing a thicker document before me, "is the instruction set for the liquidation and direct transfer of the investment and savings accounts. It names the charities and the percentages." I read each page slowly. The language was legalese, cold and precise. It transformed a lifetime of care into distributions and allocations. It felt appropriate. This was not an act of love anymore. It was an act of law, an act of principle. "Where do I sign?" I asked. Evelyn pointed to the flagged lines. One after another, I put my pen to the paper. Eleanor Banks. The signature was steady, identical to the one on the old will it was nullifying. Each stroke of the pen felt like the closing of a door, not with a slam, but with the definitive click of a lock engaging. When I was finished, Evelyn had Sharon come in to witness and notarize. The process was quiet, efficient. Within 20 minutes, it was done. The documents were stacked, ready for filing. "The transfers will begin tomorrow morning," Evelyn said. "The bank will process them. Marcus will be notified by the system. He may call you." "I expect he will." "Do you want to discuss how to handle that conversation?" "No," I said, standing up. I felt lighter, as if the satchel I carried now held only its physical contents, not the weight of a future expectation. The action is taken. The conversation will be what it will be. "Thank you, Evelyn." She walked me to the office door. "Take care of yourself, Ellie." I drove home as the afternoon began to fade. The house was quiet when I returned. I put the kettle on again. This time, I drank the tea while it was still hot. I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the empty space where the folders had been. The ledger was still there. I opened it to a fresh page. On the left side, I wrote, "Transfer to Literacy Forward." On the right, I would write the amount once it was done. I would keep my own record. This was my quiet revolution, not fought with shouts but with signatures, not fueled by rage but by a cold, clear understanding. The ledger of my heart had been audited. I had found a discrepancy between what I intended and what would occur. I had corrected it. The balance now felt true. The signed documents sat in a neat stack on my kitchen table for 24 hours. They were a presence in the house, like a quiet guest. I did not second-guess them. I reviewed the list of charities again, confirming the account numbers Evelyn had provided. The transfer instructions were in motion. My part now was to wait and to witness. Evelyn called the next morning. "The bank has processed the initial liquidation. The funds are in the holding account. The disbursements to the 3 organizations will occur tomorrow. I've taken the liberty of drafting formal letters of intent to each charity, informing them of the incoming donation. I need your final approval on the language." "I'll come by this afternoon," I said. "Actually," Evelyn said, her tone shifting slightly, "I think it would be meaningful for you to deliver the letters in person, to see where the money is going. It would make the transaction more than just a line on a bank statement." I considered this. I had chosen these places from a sense of principle, not personal connection beyond the volunteering. But she was right. If this was to be my legacy, I should look its recipients in the eye. "All right," I agreed. "I'll deliver them." "Good. Come by at 11. The letters will be ready." I dressed with the same care as the day before. This was not a legal appointment. It was a ceremonial one. I chose a simple gray skirt and a white blouse. I drove to Evelyn's office. The stack of letters was on her desk, 3 cream-colored envelopes, each bearing the name of a charity in elegant script. They were unsealed. "Read them," Evelyn said, gesturing. I sat and took out the first letter, addressed to Literacy Forward. It was brief and formal. It stated that Eleanor Banks was making a substantial one-time donation to support their mission of providing books to underfunded school districts. It specified the amount. Seeing the number written out in words and figures was different from seeing it in my ledger. It was no longer my number. It was a quantity of potential, a specific number of books, a specific number of classrooms supplied. The second letter, to the Cora Simmons Memorial Scholarship Fund at the college, noted the donation was made in memory of my mother and was to be directed to first-generation students in the field of education. The third, to the Green Roots Community Garden Project, stated the funds were for the expansion of their youth gardening and nutrition programs. The language was correct. It conveyed the act without explaining the motive. That was mine alone. "They are perfect," I said, placing them back into their envelopes. "I've included my card with each, should they have any legal or procedural questions," Evelyn said. She handed me a list of addresses and the names of the directors. "Good luck, Ellie." My first stop was Literacy Forward. It was located in a modest storefront in a part of the city that was more functional than fashionable. The window display featured colorful posters of children reading. A bell chimed when I opened the door. The interior was a cheerful chaos of bookshelves, cardboard boxes, and a few worn desks. A young woman with braided hair looked up from a computer. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Miranda Jones," I said, reading the name from my paper. "I'm Miranda," the woman said, standing. She was younger than I expected, perhaps in her 30s, wearing jeans and a t-shirt with the Literacy Forward logo. "What can I do for you?" "My name is Eleanor Banks. My lawyer, Evelyn Wilkins, may have called." Miranda's expression shifted from polite inquiry to focused attention. "Yes, she said you might be by. Please, come to my office. It's just a corner of the storeroom, I'm afraid." I followed her past towers of book boxes into a small, cramped space with a desk and 2 chairs. She cleared a stack of catalogs from one chair for me to sit. "Ms. Wilkins mentioned a donation," Miranda said, sitting behind her desk. "We are, of course, grateful for any support." I handed her the envelope. "This is the formal notification." She opened it, her eyes scanning the text. I watched her face. She read the amount. Her breath caught, just a small, audible intake. She looked up at me, then back down at the letter, as if checking she had read it correctly. "Ms. Banks, this is extraordinary." Her voice was hushed. "This is more than our annual operating budget. What is this for?" "It is for the mission stated in the letter," I said, "to provide books." "But why? Thank you, profoundly, but a donation of this size—" She trailed off, searching my face for context. "I was a school librarian for 35 years, I said. "I believe in the specific weight of a book in a child's hands. I want the money used for that, to put physical books into physical libraries, no digital subscriptions, paper and ink." Miranda nodded slowly, the shock beginning to settle into something like awe. "We can do that. We have a list of 20 schools whose library budgets were cut to 0 this year. This would restore all of them, and then some." She looked at the letter again, a smile breaking through her disbelief. "This is a miracle. For them." "Good," I said. I stood up. There was nothing else to say. The transaction was complete. The money had found its purpose. "Wait," Miranda said, standing quickly. Can we name something after you? A reading room? A program?" "No," I said, pausing at the door. "Use it well. That is the only recognition I require." My next stop was across town, at the administrative offices of the college. The building was older, ivy-covered, with a sense of settled history. I was directed to the development office. The director, a tall, distinguished man named Dr. Abbott, received me in a paneled office lined with photographs of graduating classes. He read the letter with a professional calm, though I saw his eyebrows rise slightly. "A magnificent gift, Mrs. Banks. And in your mother's name, Cora Simmons. Was she an alumna?" "She was, class of 1958. She cleaned houses to pay her tuition. She believed an education was the one thing they could not take from you." Dr. Abbott nodded solemnly. "A sentiment that built this institution. This scholarship will change lives for generations. It will give other young women the chance your mother had." He placed the letter carefully on his desk. "May I ask what inspired this timing?" "It felt like the right time to honor the past," I said. It was not a lie. It is a profound honor to accept it. The college will send formal acknowledgement, of course. We would be honored if you would attend the annual scholarship dinner." "I will consider it," I said. I did not commit. This was not about my social calendar. The final stop was the Green Roots Community Garden. It was in the neighborhood where I had grown up, though it had changed. The garden was a vibrant oasis in a lot between 2 aging apartment buildings. Raised beds overflowed with kale, tomatoes, and peppers. A chain-link fence was covered with climbing beans. A small shed stood to one side. I found the project coordinator, a man named Leo, kneeling in the soil, showing a group of children how to check for ripe strawberries. He was perhaps 50, with strong, weathered hands and a wide-brimmed hat. He stood wiping his hands on his trousers when I approached. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "I'm looking for Leo." "That's me," he said, smiling. I introduced myself and handed him the final envelope. He opened it with dirt-stained fingers. He read slowly, his lips moving slightly. Then he went very still. He looked from the paper to the garden around him, then back to me. "This is for Green Roots?" he asked, his voice thick. "Yes." He let out a long, slow breath. "Ma'am, you see this garden? We run it on grants that might not renew and donations from the farmers market stand. We're always one season from folding. This," he held up the letter, the paper trembling slightly. "This means a permanent irrigation system, a proper tool shed, a paid coordinator so I don't have to do this nights and weekends. It means we can triple the number of kids in the after-school program." He looked at me, his eyes bright. "This is life-changing." "That is the intention," I said. I felt a tightness in my throat that I had not felt in the other offices. Here the impact was so immediate, so tangible. I could smell the soil, see the children's curious faces. "Thank you," Leo said, and the words were simple but carried the weight of true gratitude. "Thank you for seeing us." I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. I turned and walked back to my car. The sun was high and warm. I sat in the driver's seat for several minutes, watching Leo gather the children around him, pointing at the letter, their faces eager and confused. I had done it. The money was no longer a point of contention in my family. It was now books, scholarships, and strawberry plants. It was rooted in things that grew. I drove home. The house was quiet. I went to the kitchen and opened my ledger. In careful script, on the right-hand side of the fresh page, I entered the total sum of the transfers. Then on the left, I wrote 3 words, "Paid in full." I closed the book. The act was irrevocable. The balance was 0. I felt a profound silence, not of emptiness, but of completion. The deed was done. The gift was given. All that remained was to live with the consequences and to let the seeds I had just planted grow in their new soil. The days following the transfers developed a new rhythm. The silence in my house was no longer the silence of waiting, but of a task completed. I tended to my own small garden in the backyard. I read library books without checking the due date. I cooked simple meals for one. The ledger remained on the shelf, its final entry sufficient. The phone call came on the 4th day in the late morning. I was repotting a fern on the sun porch. I saw Marcus's name on the caller ID. I wiped the soil from my hands with a towel before answering. "Hello, Marcus." "Hey, Mom." His voice was breezy, casual. It was his favor voice. I recognized it from years of requests, large and small. "How's it going over there?" "I'm well. How are you and the children?" "Busy, you know, the usual chaos." He paused. I could hear the faint sound of his car's turn signal in the background. He was driving. "Listen, I'm glad I caught you. I wanted to run something by you." "Go ahead." "So, we're thinking of trading in Lisa's SUV. The mileage is getting up there, and with the kids' activities, we really need something more reliable. We've got our eye on a new model. The deal is pretty good, but the down payment is steeper than we'd like. I was wondering if you could help bridge the gap this month. Nothing major, maybe $20,000. We can pay you back once my bonus clears in the fall." He said it all in one smooth, practiced flow, a statement of need, a specific number, a vague promise of repayment that I knew from experience would be forgotten or argued away. This was the mechanism I had funded for decades. A problem arose. Mom's money provided the solution. It was a transaction that required no gratitude, only an expectation. I looked at my hands, the soil under my nails, the lines of my knuckles. I felt a cold clarity. "I'm afraid I can't do that right now, Marcus." There was a brief silence. I could picture his expression, the slight tightening around his eyes. "Why not? Is everything okay with your accounts?" My accounts are fine. I am in the process of finalizing some estate planning. It's not a good time for large withdrawals. Estate planning? His tone sharpened, edged with impatience. Mom, you've had a will for years. What's there to plan? This is just a short-term loan. It won't affect your estate. He said the word with a faint derision. My financial priorities have shifted. I need to keep my liquidity reserved. For what? The impatience was now fully present. You live simply. You don't spend money. That's the whole point. The money just sits there. This is for your grandkids' safety and convenience. A reliable car. The children seemed perfectly safe when I last saw them, I said, my voice level, and their wants seemed focused on phones and game mods, not automotive safety. He sighed, a long, exasperated sound. That's different. This is a necessity. Come on, Mom, don't be difficult. It's $20,000. It's a drop in the bucket for you. The phrase, so close to the one I had overheard, solidified my resolve. My decision is made, Marcus. I cannot help you with the down payment. Another silence, longer this time. I heard the blare of another car's horn through the phone. Fine, he said finally, his voice cooled. If that's how you want to be. Lisa's going to be disappointed. The kids were excited about the new car. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I was. I was sorry for the disappointment I was causing, but I was not sorry for my refusal. The two things existed separately. We'll manage, he said, his tone formal now, distancing itself. I'll talk to you later. Goodbye, Marcus. I set the phone down on the wicker table. My heart was beating steadily, a little faster than usual, but not racing. I had done it. I had said no. The first boundary, drawn not in anger, but in stone. I finished repotting the fern, watered it, and placed it in a spot with indirect light. Then I changed my clothes. I needed to be somewhere the value of money was measured differently. I drove back to the Green Roots Community Garden. It was a weekday afternoon, and the space was quieter than before. Leo was alone, installing a new section of drip irrigation hose along a row of raised beds. He looked up and smiled when he saw me. Mrs. Banks, back so soon? I was nearby, I said. It was not entirely untrue. I wanted to see the garden on a regular day. Well, you picked a good one. We got the preliminary transfer confirmation from the lawyer this morning. The board is meeting tonight. It's real. He shook his head, still seeming to disbelieve it. Already, I'm laying out this irrigation. We've needed this for 5 years. I nodded. What else will you do first? He stood, wiping his hands. First, we secure the lease on this lot. It's month to month. With this, we can offer a long-term agreement to the landlord. Then the tool shed. Then we hire a part-time assistant so I can focus on the educational programs. He pointed to a chalkboard leaning against the shed. A schedule was written on it. Next week, we start the new after-school group. 10 kids from the complex. We're going to build a pizza garden. Tomatoes, basil, peppers, onions. They'll tend it all summer and have a pizza party in August with the harvest. I looked at the chalkboard, at his dirty hands, at the neat rows of young plants. The $20,000 Marcus had asked for was, here, the difference between uncertainty and permanence. It was a tool shed. It was a secured lease. It was a pizza party for 10 children who likely did not take fresh vegetables for granted. It sounds like an excellent plan, I said. It is, thanks to you. He looked at me, his expression turning thoughtful. Can I ask you something? Not about the money, about you. You can ask. Why a garden? Of all the places, why here? I considered the question. I looked at the dark soil, the green shoots. A garden requires patience. You prepare the soil, you plant the seed, you water it, you wait. You cannot rush the harvest. You must tend to it consistently. The result is something that feeds you. It is a slow, honest process. I paused. It teaches values that are becoming scarce. Leo nodded slowly, understanding more than I had said aloud. It does. Thank you. for seeing the value in slow things. I stayed for another half hour, watching him work. A few residents from the apartments came by to check on their assigned plots. They greeted Leo warmly. One elderly woman gave me a tentative smile. There was a community here, built around growth and sustenance. When I returned home, the light on my answering machine was blinking. I pressed play. "Mom, it's Marcus. Call me back when you get a chance. It's important." His voice was tense, stripped of its earlier casual pretense. I did not call back. I made dinner. I ate at the kitchen table. The phone rang again later. I let the machine answer. It was Marcus again. "Mom, pick up. I need to talk to you. The bank called. Call me back as soon as you get this." Oh, I erased the message. The storm was no longer gathering. It had made landfall. The first raindrops were the notifications from the bank. The wind was the confusion in his voice. I was in the eye of it, calm and prepared. I washed my dishes, dried them, and put them away. I went to bed early. I would need my rest. The confrontation, I knew, would arrive at my door tomorrow. The morning after the messages, I woke at my usual time. The house was quiet, but the air felt charged, like the moment before a thunderclap. I performed my normal routine: shower, dress, prepare oatmeal and tea. I ate at the kitchen table, reading the local newspaper. I did not turn on the television. I wanted no external noise to dilute what was coming. The phone rang at 8:17 a.m. I finished chewing a bite of oatmeal before I answered. "Mother." His voice was a single compressed word. It was not Marcus, my son. It was a stranger vibrating with fury. "What have you done?" "Good morning, Marcus. I've had my breakfast. Have you?" "Don't you dare," he hissed. I could hear the strain in his vocal cords, the sound of a man gripping a steering wheel too tightly. "I just got off the phone with the bank. Fraud prevention. They were verifying a series of unusually large disbursements from your investment account. Disbursements I did not authorize." "You are a co-signer for notification purposes, Marcus, not for authorization. The account is in my name. Where is the money?" The question was a shout. I held the phone slightly away from my ear. "They said it was transferred. Where did it go?" "The funds have been donated to 3 charitable organizations. The transfers are complete." There was a silence so profound I could hear the hum of the open line and the ragged sound of his breathing. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, shaking with disbelief. "Donated. You donated it. You gave away... How much? How much did you give?" "The entirety of the liquid assets. The balance is now 0. A sharp, ugly laugh crackled through the phone. "0? You're joking. This is a joke. You're trying to teach me a lesson because I asked for a loan for a car. This is your petty revenge. You moved it to another account. Tell me you moved it to another account." "I did not. The money is gone. It belongs to Literacy Forward, the Cora Simmons Scholarship Fund, and the Green Roots Community Garden." "A garden!" he screamed. The word ripped from him. "You gave my children's inheritance to a community garden? Are you insane? Have you lost your mind?" "My mind is clear. The decision was mine. The money was mine." "It was not just yours," he roared. "It was their future. It was Chloe's college. It was David's startup. It was our safety net. You had no right." "I had every right. It was my labor, my savings. You contributed nothing to it. You only ever planned to subtract from it." "That's what families do," he shouted. "We support each other. You were supposed to support us. You were supposed to pass it on. That's the whole point. What is wrong with you?" His words were physical blows, but they landed on the armored shell of my resolve. I felt nothing but a cold assessment of his character. This was the core of him, laid bare by crisis. Not concern for me, but rage at the loss of his asset. The point, I said, my voice flat and even, was to leave a legacy of principle, not a trust fund for entitlement. I have chosen my principle. You chose to betray your family. You stole from your own grandchildren. Do you hear yourself? You're a thief, a selfish, spiteful old woman. I did not flinch. The insults were expected. They were the currency of a man who could not win with logic. The paperwork is legal and final, Marcus. There's nothing to discuss. The hell there isn't. We'll undo it. I'll get a lawyer. I'll have you declared incompetent. I'll sue those charities for exploitation. I will get that money back. You are welcome to try. My lawyer is Evelyn Wilkins. You know her. She has anticipated such reactions. The documents are ironclad. The donations are irrevocable. Any legal action you take will only waste more of your own money and create a public record of your greed. He made a strangled sound. I heard the thump of his fist hitting something solid, likely the dashboard of his car. Why? Just tell me why you would do this? Was it the car? Was it the phone? I was just managing the kids. It was just talk. It was not just talk, I said, my voice dropping, becoming quieter, which forced him to quiet down to hear me. It was a philosophy, one I heard you teach my grandchildren on your patio. Grandma's money will buy you everything. I heard you, Marcus. I was standing right outside the door with a casserole. The silence this time was different. It was the silence of sudden, horrifying comprehension. He remembered the evening. He remembered his words. He remembered the forgotten dish on the table. The cause of his ruin was not a random act of senility, but a direct consequence of his own carelessness. You were eavesdropping? He said, his voice weak with incredulity. I was leaving. You were instructing. The lesson you taught them was the final piece of information I needed. It showed me what my legacy would become in your hands. I chose to change it. Over that? He whispered, then his voice surged back with fury. Over one stupid thing I said to shut them up? You destroyed our future over one sentence? It was not one sentence. It was the summary of your worldview. I acted accordingly. I'm coming over, he said, the words clipped and deadly. We are going to fix this. You will call that lawyer, and you will reverse it. You will tell her you were coerced or confused. I don't care what you say. You will get that money back. I will do no such thing. We'll see about that. I'm on my way. Don't you dare leave the house. The line went dead. I placed the phone back in its cradle. My oatmeal was cold. I carried the bowl to the sink, washed it, and dried it. I put it away in the cabinet. I walked to the living room and sat in my reading chair. I did not pick up a book. I folded my hands in my lap and looked out the front window, down the quiet, sun-dappled street. I waited. I did not pace. I did not wring my hands. I rehearsed nothing. The facts were simple. The money was gone. The reason was sound. His anger was his to manage. My peace was mine to keep. I saw his car, a sleek silver sedan, turn onto my street. It accelerated faster than the limit, then braked hard in front of my house, spraying a small arc of gravel from the curb. The driver's door flew open. He emerged, his suit jacket flapping, his face a mask of pure, uncontained rage. He did not look like my son. He looked like a creditor coming to collect. He stormed up the walkway to my porch. I watched him through the window. He did not ring the bell. He began pounding on the front door with the side of his fist, the sound echoing through the small house. "Mom, open this door, now!" I took a slow breath. I stood up. I smoothed the front of my dress. I walked to the door, turned the lock, and opened it. He stood on the porch, his body rigid, his chest heaving. The professional polish was gone. His tie was crooked. A vein pulsed in his temple. He looked past me into the house as if searching for contraband. "We need to talk. Inside." He stepped forward, expecting me to move. I did not move. I held my position in the doorway. "We can talk here." I'm not having this conversation on the porch like a salesman. He tried to step around me. I shifted slightly, blocking the threshold. "This is my home. We will talk here, or you will leave." His eyes widened in disbelief at the physical barrier. He took a step back, his hands clenching at his sides. "Fine, have it your way. Let the whole neighborhood hear." His voice was loud, projecting. He wanted an audience. I saw Mrs. Tillerson's curtain twitch in the house next door. "Say what you have come to say, Marcus." "What I have to say?" He laughed, a harsh barking sound. "I have to say you have committed financial suicide. I have to say you have been manipulated. I have to say you have betrayed this family in a way I never thought possible." "I have betrayed no one. I have redirected funds that were mine." "They were not just yours," he roared, throwing his arms wide. "They were held in trust, a trust you were supposed to steward for the next generation, for Chloe and David. You had a responsibility and you abdicated it because your feelings got hurt." "My feelings are not relevant. My judgment is. I judged the intended use of those funds to be harmful. I changed their destination." "Harmful?" he spat. "Providing for your grandchildren is harmful? Giving them a head start in life is harmful? What is harmful is leaving them with nothing because of some sudden, senile moral crisis." I let the word senile hang in the air between us. I did not react. I kept my gaze steady on his face. They have parents who provide for them abundantly. They have a house, private schools, vacations. They lack for nothing. They lack security. They lack the foundation we were building for them. You tore that foundation out from under them. For what? A tax write-off? The admiration of some strangers at a charity? For principle. Principle doesn't pay for college. He was shouting now, his face flushed. Principle doesn't cover a medical emergency. Principle is a luxury for people who have money to burn. You had money and you burned it. You took what was meant for your blood and gave it to strangers. I gave it to causes that will use it to teach, to uplift, to feed. They will use it to create more, not to consume. That is a better legacy than subsidizing endless wants. Who are you to decide what their wants are? He demanded, pointing a finger at me. You with your frugal little life in this frugal little house. You think your way is the only way. You resent that we have more? That we want nice things for our children? I do not resent your success. I resent the values you are teaching with it. I heard you teach them. That money solves everything. That my purpose is to fund their whims. That is what I resent. So this is punishment, he said, his voice dropping into a venomous whisper. This is your petty, vindictive punishment for a comment you overheard. You are holding my children's future hostage to teach me a lesson. That is sick. That is emotional blackmail. It is not blackmail. It is a consequence. You presented a worldview. I acted based on the logical conclusion of that worldview. If my money is merely a tool for buying things, then it can buy things that I choose. I chose books, scholarships, and vegetables. He stared at me, his breath coming in short gusts. He was trying to find a crack in my calm, a lever to pry me open. The children? He said, changing tactics, his voice straining for reason. Think of Chloe and David. What do I tell them? That their grandmother doesn't love them enough to secure their future? You will tell them the truth. That their grandmother loved them enough to try and give them something more valuable than money. That she loved them enough to hope they would learn the difference. They will never understand that. They will only know you chose strangers over them. You have alienated them. You have broken their hearts. Is that what you want? To be the grandmother who betrayed them? The accusation was designed to wound. I felt it, a sharp prick behind my sternum. But I had already mourned that potential loss. The pain was familiar, acknowledged. If the only way to be their grandmother is to be their silent financier, then that is a role I am unwilling to play. They will understand or they will not. That is now their work to do, not mine. You are unbelievable, he whispered, shaking his head. You are sitting here so calm, so righteous while you destroy your family. Do you feel powerful? Do you feel like you've won? This is not about winning. It is about correction. It's about control. You couldn't control what I said, so you controlled the one thing you thought would hurt me, my children's money. It was never their money, Marcus. It was always mine. That is the correction you refuse to see. You have conflated my assets with your entitlement. I have separated them permanently. He took another step back as if pushed by the finality of the word. He looked at my house, my faded porch swing, my well-tended flower bed. He saw the life he considered small, the life he had assumed would eventually convert to cash for his expansion. That conversion was now canceled. I will fight this, he said, but the fire in his voice was guttering, replaced by a cold, stubborn defiance. I will get lawyers. I will prove undue influence. I will prove you are not of sound mind. You are welcome to try. Evelyn Wilkins has all the documentation. My medical records show no cognitive decline. Your fight will be public, expensive, and futile. It will only prove my point about your priorities. For a long moment, he said nothing. The street was quiet. A bird sang in the maple tree. The ordinary sounds of the neighborhood continued, indifferent to our war. The fury had drained from him, leaving behind a pale, stunned emptiness. The reality was settling in. The money was truly gone. His threats were impotent. He had no leverage. He looked at me, and for a flicker of a second, I saw the little boy he had been, confused and hurt by something he could not fix. Then it was gone, replaced by the hardened man. You have made a terrible mistake, he said, his voice flat, and you will die alone because of it. He turned and walked stiffly to his car. He did not look back. He got in, started the engine, and drove away slowly, with none of the violent urgency of his arrival. I closed the front door. I locked it. I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hands were steady. The confrontation was over. He had said all the words I expected him to say. He had confirmed every assumption I had made about his character. I sat at the table and drank the water. The house was very quiet. I had not raised my voice. I had not cried. I had simply held the line. The revenge, if that is what it was not in my words. It was in my silence. It was in my unshakable, immovable position on the threshold of my own home. He had come for a fight, and I had given him a wall. Now he had to live with the echo of his own rage, bouncing off a surface that would not yield. He did not drive far. I watched from the window as his car slowed at the end of the street, signaled, and pulled into the small cul-de-sac. He turned off the engine. He sat there, a dark silhouette behind the glass. I could imagine his thoughts churning, the initial shock of the loss giving way to a deeper, more troubling confusion. The money was gone. His threats were empty. All that remained were the unanswered questions, the ones he had been shouting around but not truly asking. I waited. I did not go to him. This part he had to choose. After 15 minutes, the car door opened. He got out and walked back up the street, his steps slower now, less certain. He came up the walk and stood on the porch again. He did not pound. He knocked, a firm, single rap. I opened the door. We looked at each other. The rage was gone from his face, replaced by a strained, weary tension. "We need to finish this," he said. His voice was hoarse. "Come in," I said, and stepped aside. He entered my living room. He did not sit. He stood in the center of the rug, looking at the photographs on the mantel, the worn furniture, the shelves of books. He was seeing the physical evidence of the life that had generated the money he had lost. "Why?" he asked again, but it was a different question now. It was not a demand. It was a plea for understanding. Just help me understand. Was it really just because of what I said? I gestured to the sofa. "Sit down, Marcus." He hesitated, then sat on the edge of the cushion, his elbows on his knees. I took my reading chair opposite him. I folded my hands in my lap. The afternoon light slanted across the floor between us. "It was not just because of what you said," I began, my voice measured and quiet. "It was because what you said was true. It was the honest expression of what you believe. You believe my value, my life's work, is a financial reservoir for your family. You believe my purpose is to convert my carefulness into your convenience. He opened his mouth to protest, but I held up a hand just slightly. He closed it. I worked 2 jobs when you were in middle school, so you could play on that travel basketball team. Do you remember? I would come home from the library at 4, change my clothes, and go clean offices until 10. I did not buy a single new item of clothing for myself for 3 years. I thought I was teaching you the cost of things, the direct link between effort and reward. I thought you understood that the shoes I bought you were not just shoes. They were hours of my life. He looked down at his hands. When you wanted to go to that out-of-state college, the one beyond our means, I took a second mortgage on this house. I never told you. I said we had a scholarship. For 10 years, I paid that loan. Every payment was a choice. I chose your opportunity over my security. I thought I was teaching you that education was worth sacrifice. I paused. The room was silent except for the ticking of the old clock on the wall. I saved for retirement, every month, a set amount, before any other bill. I drove old cars. I repaired appliances instead of replacing them. I built that savings not for luxury but for dignity, so I would not be a burden, so I could leave something behind that said my life had added some small measure of security to the world. I leaned forward just a little to hold his gaze. He would not look away from this. Then, last week, I brought you a casserole. I stood on your patio and heard you explain the world to my grandchildren. You told them the sum total of my sacrifices, my choices, my years of labor was a magic wallet for their desires. You reduced every hard decision, every tired night, every saved penny to a single function, to buy them everything. You did not say, if Grandma chooses. You did not say, we are grateful. You stated it as a law of nature. Grandma's money will buy you everything. His face was pale. He swallowed. In that moment, I realized I had failed, I said, and my voice did not break. It was a statement of fact. If that is the man you are, if that is the lesson you are passing on, then I failed as a mother. I gave you things, but I did not give you the understanding that things have a cost. I gave you security, but I did not give you the character to be stewards of it. I raised a consumer, not a contributor. That is my failure. Mom, he whispered, but I continued. So I corrected the only thing left within my power to correct. I could not change your mind. I could not undo your words. But I could change the destination of the money that had so distorted your view of me. I did not donate your money, Marcus. I donated mine. I invested it in children who still understand please and thank you. In young adults who will appreciate a scholarship because it is their only chance. In a community that will turn $1 into a tomato plant, and that plant into a meal, and that meal into a lesson about patience and care. I sat back in my chair. I had said it. The full, unvarnished truth. He was utterly still. The anger, the defiance, the bluster, all of it had been stripped away by the quiet, relentless accounting of my words. He was faced with a ledger of his own making, and the balance was not in his favor. You think I am selfish, I said, but selfishness is demanding the fruits of another's labor without respecting the laborer. Selfishness is feeling entitled to a legacy you played no part in building. I have been selfless for a lifetime. This, finally, was an act of self-preservation, to reclaim my dignity from being seen as a utility, to reclaim my legacy from being defined as a line of credit. He finally looked up at me. His eyes were red-rimmed, but he was not crying. He was stunned, hollowed out. What am I supposed to do now? The question was small, stripped of all pretense. That, I said, is no longer my problem to solve. You are a 47-year-old man with a good job, a healthy family, and a beautiful home. You have everything you need to build your own security, to teach your own children real values, or you can choose not to. That is your choice. My choice has been made. The silence stretched. The clock ticked. A car passed outside. He stood up slowly as if his body were heavy. He did not look at the photographs. He did not look at me. He walked to the front door. He opened it and paused on the threshold, his back to me. "I don't know who you are," he said, his voice barely audible. "You never took the time to find out," I replied. "You were too busy counting what you thought was yours." He stepped out onto the porch and closed the door softly behind him. This time, I did not watch him drive away. I listened to the sound of his engine starting, the sound of the car moving down the street, and then the return of the neighborhood quiet. The reckoning was complete. I had spoken my truth. He had heard it. The consequences for both of us were now ours to live with. The sound of his car faded, absorbed by the asphalt and the lazy afternoon air. I remained in my chair. The room held the ghost of our words, the charged space where my truth had finally stood up to his fiction. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was dense and heavy, like the quiet after a storm has passed, but before the damage is assessed. I did not move for a long time. I watched the square of sunlight on the rug slowly elongate and grow pale. The clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. These were the only sounds. My victory, if it could be called that, felt like ash in my mouth. I had wanted him to see. He had seen, and what I saw in his face as he left was not understanding, but devastation. I had not broken his greed. I had broken his idea of me, and in doing so, I had broken a fundamental connection. The cord was cut. The silence was the proof. When the light grew too dim to read by, I stood. My joints ached from stillness. I went to the kitchen and mechanically prepared dinner. A single chicken breast, some broccoli, a small potato. The actions were routine, meaningless. I ate at the table, the empty chairs, a stark audience. I washed the single plate, the single fork, the single glass. I put them away. The house was a museum of my life. Every object had a story, a memory attached to a person who was now a stranger. The ceramic vase Chloe had made me in second grade, lopsided and glazed a violent purple. The framed crayon drawing from David of a stick figure me with a giant smile. The professional photo of Marcus's family from 2 Christmases ago, everyone in matching sweaters, smiling for the photographer. These were not just decorations, they were landmarks. And now the territory they mapped was close to me. I went to bed early but did not sleep. I lay in the dark and listened to the house settle. I thought of Marcus sitting in his car down the street, his head in his hands. I thought of him driving home to his modern house, to his wife, to his children. What would he tell them? That Grandma was mean? That Grandma was crazy? That Grandma had stolen their future? Would he tell them the truth? That he had reduced her to a bank account and she had decided to close it? I thought of Chloe and David. Their confusion would be real. They would not understand principles or legacies. They would understand only that something had been taken away, something they had been promised. I had hoped my action would be a lesson, but for them, it would likely only be a loss. That was the heaviest stone on my chest. In trying to save them from a moral poverty, I may have ensured they saw me only as the cause of a material one. The night passed in slow, grueling hours. I rose at dawn, tired but not weary. There was a difference. Weary implies a desire to stop. I had no desire to stop. I had made my choice. Now I had to bear the weight of its aftermath. The day was a mirror of the previous one, but emptier. No phone rang, no car pulled up. The world had contracted to the boundaries of my property line. I gardened. I read. I performed the maintenance of existence. I felt like a clock that had been wound for the last time, slowly ticking down in an empty room. In the late afternoon, my phone did ring. It was not Marcus. It was a number I did not recognize, but with a local area code. I answered. "Grandma." It was Chloe's voice, small and hesitant. My breath caught. "Chloe, hello." "Hi." There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing. "Dad is really mad." "I know." "He said you did something with your money. He said you gave it away to poor people." I considered my words. "I gave it to organizations that help people. Yes. But why?" Her voice was not accusatory, just genuinely puzzled. "Dad said it was for me and David, for college and stuff." "That was one idea for it," I said carefully. "I had a different idea. I decided to use it to help in a different way." "But don't you love us?" The question was innocent, blunt, and it pierced the careful armor I had built. "I love you more than anything in this world, Chloe. That is why I did it. Because love is not about giving people money. It is about giving them what is good for them, even if they don't understand it yet." She was quiet. I could almost hear her 10-year-old mind working, trying to reconcile my words with her father's anger. "Mom says we shouldn't talk to you right now, that it's too upsetting for Dad." "I understand. You should listen to your mother." "Are you going to be poor now?" she asked, a new worry entering her voice. "No, sweetheart. I have everything I need." "My house is paid for. I have my pension. I will be just fine." "Okay." She sounded relieved, but still confused. "I have to go. Mom's calling me." "All right. Thank you for calling, Chloe. I love you." "Love you too, Grandma." The line went dead. That brief, fragile connection left me more hollow than the silence before it. She had reached out, but the bridge between us was damaged, unstable. Her call was not a reconciliation. It was a scouting mission into unfamiliar and frightening territory. I placed the phone down. The grief arrived then, not as a storm, but as a slow, rising tide. It filled the hollow spaces the anger had vacated. I mourned the easy grandmother I had been, the one who baked cookies and gave hugs, and yes, sometimes bought toys. That grandmother was gone. I had killed her with my own hand when I signed those papers. What was left was someone harder, someone who had chosen a painful truth over a comfortable lie. I believed it was the right choice. But believing it did not make it hurt less. I walked through my quiet house. The echoes of my life with them, the laughter during board games, the sleepy children on my sofa, the noisy holiday meals, all of it seemed like a recording played in another room. The present was this: silence, solitude, and the unwavering certainty that I had chosen to stand alone on a foundation of principle, because the foundation of family had proven to be made of sand. The revenge was complete, and its price was this profound, echoing loneliness. I had known the cost. I had paid it. Now I had to live in the house I had purchased. The days after Chloe's call passed with a slow, granular rhythm. The sharp edge of grief began to dull, worn down by the simple abrasion of routine. I watered my plants. I went to the grocery store. I read. The silence in the house became familiar again, a companion rather than an accusation. I had made my choice. I was living inside it. A week after the confrontation, the mail brought a large, cream-colored envelope bearing the logo of the college's development office. It was addressed to me in formal calligraphy. I carried it to the kitchen table, slid it open with a butter knife, and removed the contents. There was a cover letter from Dr. Abbott reiterating the college's profound gratitude for the establishment of the Cora Simmons Memorial Scholarship. Paperclipped to it was another sheet of paper, a photocopy of a handwritten letter. The heading read, "Thank you from the inaugural Cora Simmons Scholar." I sat down. I read it. Dear Mrs. Banks, my name is Alicia Mendez. I am a first-generation student from Riverton. I received notification last week that I am the first recipient of the scholarship established in your mother's name. I do not have the words to tell you what this means. My mother is a home health aide. My father drives a bus. They have worked every day of their lives so I could have this chance, but the numbers never added up. This scholarship is the difference between me attending college and me watching the acceptance letter fade on my bulletin board. I plan to study education. I want to be a high school English teacher. I want to give other kids like me the confidence to find their own voices. Your mother's legacy and your generosity have given me my voice. I promise to use it well. With deepest gratitude, Alicia Mendez. The handwriting was careful, the lines straight on the unlined paper. I read the letter 3 times. The words did not swim. They sat on the page, clear and solid. The difference between me attending college and me watching the acceptance letter fade. I knew that difference. My mother had known it. I had fought for it for Marcus. Now, through this stranger's pen, I saw it secured for someone else. I felt no surge of triumph. I felt a deep, quiet verification. This was the alternative. This was where the money had gone. It was not vanished. It was transformed into a specific young woman's specific future. It had a name and a purpose. I went to the small desk in the living room and found a simple wooden frame that had held a picture of Marcus's graduation. I removed the photo and placed Alicia Mendez's thank you letter inside. I hung the frame on the wall near my reading chair where I could see it. It was not a trophy. It was a receipt. Proof of purchase for a different kind of legacy. Later that afternoon, the phone rang. It was Chloe again. "Hi, Grandma." "Hello, Chloe. How are you?" "Okay, I'm at Jenny's house. We're doing a history project." She paused. I told her about the scholarship. I was surprised. "You did?" "Yeah, her mom is a teacher. She said it was a really nice thing to do. She said teachers need all the help they can get." Chloe's voice was thoughtful. "Is that what the money is doing? Helping a teacher?" "It is helping a young woman become a teacher, yes." "That's good," Chloe said, and it sounded like a genuine conclusion, not a parroted phrase. "Dad is still mad. He and Mom are talking in low voices a lot. It's weird." "Change is often uncomfortable," I said. "Are you really going to be okay? With money, I mean?" "I am perfectly okay, Chloe. I have everything I need." "Good." There was another pause, the sound of muffled voices in the background. Jenny's mom said maybe I could volunteer at the library this summer to put on my college applications later. Dad says I don't need to, but I think I might want to. Something loosened slightly in my chest, a tiny, almost imperceptible shift. "I think that is an excellent idea. The library is a wonderful place." "Yeah, maybe." She sounded distracted now, ready to rejoin her friend. "I gotta go, Grandma. We have to finish our poster." "All right, have fun with your project." "Bye." The call ended. It was not a dramatic reconciliation. It was a small, normal conversation. She had not asked for anything. She had shared a fragment of her world and absorbed a fragment of mine. The bridge, while damaged, was not closed. Someone was tentatively testing its weight. The next morning, I woke with a different kind of purpose. I dressed in old jeans and a work shirt. I drove to the Green Roots Community Garden. Leo was there, as I expected, directing 2 teenagers as they assembled a new compost bin. He saw me and waved, his smile broad and uncomplicated. "Mrs. Banks, good timing. We're just about to plant the new herb beds. Want to get your hands dirty?" "That is precisely why I'm here," I said. He handed me a trowel and a pair of gardening gloves. He showed me the rows already marked with string and the trays of young seedlings: basil, thyme, oregano, mint. I knelt on the padded kneeler he provided. The soil was dark and rich, freshly turned. I began to dig small holes, carefully loosening the roots of each tiny plant, settling them into the earth, firming the soil around their stems. The work was methodical and physical. The sun was warm on my back. The smell of soil and green things filled my senses. My hands, which had signed the documents that caused so much turmoil, were now engaged in a simple, creative act. I was planting something. I was tending. Leo worked beside me for a while in companionable silence. Then he said, "The board approved the lease, 5 years, with an option for 5 more. This place is officially home. I'm glad to hear it, I said, placing another basil plant into its hole. That first after-school group starts next week. 10 kids. We're going to plant the pizza garden today, so it's ready for them to tend. I looked down the row at the young tomato and pepper plants waiting their turn. This was the new soil, not just for the vegetables, but for the children who would care for them, for the community that would eat them. And I realized, kneeling there with dirt under my nails, it was new soil for me. My legacy was no longer a number in a bank. It was this. It was Alicia Mendez's college tuition. It was a shelf of books in a struggling school. It was this herb bed and the promise of a pizza party in August. I finished the row. I sat back on my heels, surveying the neat lines of green. They were small and vulnerable, but they were rooted. They would require water, weeding, and time, but they had a chance. That was all I had ever wanted for my own family, to give them roots in good soil. Perhaps in a different way, I still could. The seed of that possibility, like the seedlings before me, was fragile, but it was in the ground, and for now, that was enough. He came on a Saturday morning, 2 weeks after my day at the community garden. I was on my knees in my own backyard weeding the flower bed along the fence. I heard a car door shut gently, not the slam of his previous visit. I did not stand up. I continued working, pulling the stubborn roots of chickweed from the damp soil. I heard his footsteps on the side path, then his silhouette appeared at the corner of the house. He stood there watching me work. He was alone. He wore casual clothes, khakis and a plain polo shirt, not his usual weekend golf attire. He looked thinner, or perhaps just less inflated by his own certainty. I sat back on my heels and looked at him. The sun was behind him, casting his face in shadow. "Good morning, Marcus." "Mom?" He shifted his weight. "Can I come back there? You know the way." He walked slowly down the stone path and stopped a few feet from my kneeling pad. He did not speak immediately. He looked at my hands, dirty in the gardening gloves, at the pile of weeds beside me, at the tidy rows of impatiens and hostas. "The garden looks good," he said finally. "It requires consistent attention. Weeds grow whether you want them to or not." He nodded, understanding the subtext. He looked around, anywhere but directly at me. "The kids are with Lisa at a soccer tournament. I hope they play well." Another silence stretched. This was not the silence of before, filled with rage. This was the silence of a man who has run out of script. The arguments were spent. The threats were empty. All that remained was the blank space after the explosion. "I got a call from Evelyn Wilkins," he said, his voice low. "She sent me copies of the finalized documents, the charitable trusts, the dissolution of the previous will. It's very thorough. Evelyn is an excellent lawyer." "She is." He swallowed. "She also told me in very clear terms that any legal challenge would be pointless and costly. She said I should think about what I really wanted to accomplish." That was sound advice. He took a deep breath, his shoulders rising and falling. He finally looked at me. His eyes were tired. The righteous fury was gone, replaced by a hollowed-out shame. "What you said, that last time, I haven't been able to stop hearing it." I said nothing. I waited. I have been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of remembering. His voice cracked slightly. He cleared his throat. "I remember the basketball shoes. I didn't know about the second job. I really didn't. I thought we had a scholarship. I wanted you to think that. I did not want you to carry that debt." "But I should have carried the knowledge," he said, the words coming out in a rush. "I should have known what it cost. You're right. I never saw the cost. I only saw the result. And then I came to expect the result, without the cost." I remained silent. He needed to say this without interruption, without absolution from me. "The things I said to you, on the phone, on the porch, they were—" He shook his head, unable to find a sufficient word. "I'm not asking you to forgive me for them. I don't deserve that. Not yet." "What are you asking, Marcus?" He looked down at his shoes, now scuffed with dirt from my path. What do we do now? You're my mother. They're your grandchildren. This can't be the end. It just can't. He looked up, and his expression was one of pure, unadorned confusion. So what do we do? This was the question I had known would come. I had prepared for it. I pulled off my gardening gloves, one finger at a time. I laid them neatly on the kneeler. I stood up, brushing the loose soil from my jeans. I faced him. We rebuild, I said, but we rebuild on new ground, my terms. He nodded, a quick, jerky motion. Okay. First, you will stop all discussion of the money. It is gone. It is not a topic for debate, regret, or negotiation. You will not mention it to me, and you will not frame it as a loss to your children. It was a redirection. You will use that word if you must speak of it at all. Okay. Second, you and your family will attend counseling, as a family unit and you individually. You need to examine why you felt entitled to what was not yours, and you need to develop a healthier way to talk about value and legacy with Chloe and David. I will provide the names of 3 therapists. You will choose one and begin within the month. He blinked, absorbing the directive. All right, I can do that. Third, I said, picking up my trowel. I held it in my hand, a simple tool. You will volunteer with me. 1 Saturday a month at the Green Roots Community Garden. You will get dirt under your fingernails. You will work alongside people for whom a secure harvest is a victory. You will listen. You will not donate money. You will donate time and sweat. He looked at the trowel, then at my face. You want me to work in a garden? I want you to understand what growth actually requires. I want you to participate in creating something tangible, where the reward is not a transaction but a tomato. I want your children to see you doing this. They can come too, if they wish, but they will work, not watch. He was silent for a long moment, considering the humility of the task. Then he nodded again. Okay, 1 Saturday a month. These are my conditions, I said. They are not negotiable. If you agree to them and follow through consistently, then we can begin to construct a new relationship, one based on mutual respect, not financial expectation, one where I am your mother, not your creditor. He looked at me, really looked at me. Perhaps for the first time in years, he saw a 68-year-old woman in gardening clothes, holding a trowel, her back straight, her eyes clear and uncompromising. I agree, he said. His voice was firm. To all of it. Then we begin, I said. I turned back to my flower bed. I knelt down again on the pad. I picked up my gloves and put them back on. I resumed weeding. He stood there for another minute watching me work. Then, without another word, he turned and walked back up the path. I heard his car door open and close. The engine started, quieter this time. He drove away. I did not watch him go. I focused on the root system in my hand, making sure I had extracted all of it so the weed would not return. The revenge was complete. It was not the dramatic, fiery end he might have expected. It was structural. I had dismantled the old, corrupt framework of our relationship. I had not destroyed the lot. I had cleared it. Now, I had laid out the blueprint for what could be built in its place, on a foundation of honesty and earned respect. My legacy would not be the money. My legacy would be the lesson. It would be the hard, necessary work of pulling weeds and planting seeds, both in the ground and in the hearts of my family. The money had bought my freedom from their entitlement. Now my time and my terms would be the currency of our future, if they chose to accept it. I had my answer. I had my peace. I had my trowel in my hand, and good work still to do.